Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody here in the room, and obviously those of you online. Thank you so much for joining us for this Faculty Forum event on student engagement. And in a moment, I'm going to pass right over to the important people who are involved in this. But just to say that we spend a good bit of time hoping to improve our programs, improve the environment for students, listen to their problems, and we really are sincerely interested in getting feedback and improving the quality and the quantity of the feedback that we get in the faculty so that we can use that to make decisions, because very often we're honestly trying to guess as to what students want and need and whether option A is better than option B. So this is a real good opportunity to help us to improve student engagement and student feedback. So I'm not going to say any more than that. It's Lena, I don't know if you can add any more context.
The only thing I'll add is that every year when we prepare our quality report, all of the schools report a difficulty in getting good response rates to the various different types of feedback mechanisms that they use, and I've been trying to be creative. And we have Raro here, who's our faculty convener this year, and we had a faculty executive discussion involving Raro, and she had some really good insights as to what may or may not work for student feedback. And then that was I suppose the original thought that led to us having this wider faculty forum. Okay, so that's just a bit of the background of where we were coming from. So never run a hybrid meeting. It's the key learning. We have lovely camera on the wall that isn't working. So this is on my laptop at the moment. So I'm going to ask the speaker to come up and sit here beside the laptop. And if you have a presentation, you can share it. So Raro, you are first on the speakers list. You want to come up a little bit closer?
And are we taking questions in chat or maybe presentation? Because otherwise there's probably more on the screen that we can deal with. It's open, isn't it?
It's open. It is open. Yeah. So maybe you can see how many queries come in. We can decide after the presentation. We can take them. Yeah. Okay. Great.
I'm really sorry, isn't it? I want to know who's on. I'm just curious if I have any of my own.
Of who's here. Yeah, let's see. So that's the list of attendees there. Okay. It's a bit of a mixture of staff and students, I think. I suppose the reason we're going hybrid as well is in response to the student request to do it across multiple sites. And in the end, PBSI was the only one that had people available to come in person. So there we are. Right, well, move out of the way.
Right.
Ooh, okay. Hi everyone, thanks for showing up. My name is Raro. I'm the Health Sciences faculty convener for this year and for next year as well. So I'm just here to give the student perspectives to the whole faculty engagement and like student engagement in terms of academics. So in terms of what works, from my personal experience, I would say that the in-person in-person queries work a lot. For example, and I know I'm not alone in that. So let's say you're in a lecture and then towards the end of the lecture, the lecturer is like, oh, was I too fast? Was I too slow? Is there anything I could do to make this better? Like, would you like me to repeat certain concepts? And that's in terms of the delivery of the lecture. And as an individual, and I know for my classmates, because I'm in human health and disease, and we do have a few lectures with the meds, that works as well because it's an immediate response it's an immediate answer to any questions you may have or any issues you may have with the delivery of the content. I know a major form of feedback that the faculty and lecturers in health sciences do use is the queries, like towards the end of the year. So like the student queries. I just got an email this morning telling us that for third year human health and disease, our feedbacks for all the modules that we've taken this academic year will be opening today essentially. So if I can move on to what I think doesn't work from a student perspective is how late it is during the term. So for example, I have like project deadlines and exams soon. And I know health sciences, in comparison to other faculties, may be a bit more intense, especially leading up to the exam season. So that could be very discouraging. So in terms of what doesn't work, I'd say the timing, like if the student feedback sort of questionnaires could be released a bit earlier, even at this, even midway through the Hillary term, I think that could push engagement. Also, really like driving it into people's psyche and people's mentality, like not just an email from your course coordinator. If the lecturers could say maybe during their last few lectures of the semester, especially since the Hillary term is so short, could you fill this out, or can you take the last 5 minutes of this lecture or the first 5 minutes of this lecture to fill out these queries? I think really putting people on the spot might be the only thing that can work for now, since we have such busy schedules, and people may really want to give feedback, but it just sort of slips their mind. So back to, sorry, I'm just trying to check my notes. So yeah, I'd say if we're looking for a solution, I'd say more emphasizing the importance of it, because students might also not want to give feedback because they know it's not going to benefit them, which might seem a bit selfish, but it is how people think. But I feel like if we appeal to people's more humane side and people's more like basically nicer side, and help make them realize that future generations, like future students, are going to be in the same position that you've been in. And if you could let the faculty know what works, even if it's just one thing, like a single line, or what doesn't work in particular, that would greatly help the delivery of the module, greatly help people that are going to come after you. And it's just going to lead to a better college experience for people, even if you may never meet them, for example, like, or even if it may take a few years to really implement the changes that we believe will make like a positive difference for the course. So yeah, I do think the most efficient, we have the most efficient way in terms of the feedbacks and the questionnaires, but the implementation, like not having it so late in the semester, if we could push it up a bit earlier in the semester, and if the course coordinators who already have tons of work just could let the lecturers know that, okay, if you could take 5 minutes out of the end of your lecture and just say, okay, guys, could we go on Blackboard and do this? And maybe you could do that at the end of each semester, because I'm being asked to review modules I took last year and quite frankly blocked out of my memory after I finished. But if we could do semester by semester and really bring in the lecturers to get them more involved and basically put the students on the spot to get the questionnaires and feedback mechanisms going. But yeah, that's it.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Have you given any thought to the format that you receive surveys? Is it always Blackboard, or would it be sometimes SurveyMonkey? Do paper copies ever exist anymore? Or what about the interactive things in the class where you do a poll, or
Okay.
have exactly the vocabulary?
No, I get you. I did have for I had a module last semester, the biology of neurological and psychiatric diseases, the lecturer, and she had paper reviews, like paper questionnaires, like saying, okay, rank this, what would you rank this lecture out of 10 for each lecture as well? And she put the lecturer's name, and we did it in the class, in our very last class of the semester. And I found that very effective, because like say, oh, I really like this, and why did you really like this? So I'd say that's why I brought up the idea of doing it in class, like really putting students on the spot, because it doesn't take very long. So paper could work if we do it in the class. But I know that may not work for a larger course, like for like an anatomy and physiology class. But we do have a lot of delivery on Blackboard as well, like because they want it to be course for module specific. So they have the questionnaires under each module. So that is the main form of delivery of the feedback mechanisms. But I think the paper could work, or even if we do have a SurveyMonkey, as you said, within the class, I think that would be very efficient as well. But I recognize that may be a bit hard to implement. Yeah.
We move on to Anne.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on if there's any questions come up in the chat or the Q&A.
Just come in. Yeah, that should be. It's just great. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Han or Hannah. I go by Han usually in my students' union occupation, so I don't mix up my two inboxes. People have told me it's like my SU stage name, which is very flattering. So it's an honor to be here today, actually, at all, given the resignation of the education officer. It was an honor for Rara to ask me to fill the gap as my role as the off-campus officer. I will get into all that a little bit later as to who I am and why I matter. But I'm here to talk to you today about the issue, obviously, of student engagement. And one of the questions within, and when I was prepping these was, how does the Students' Union actually engage students? And we do it in a number of different ways, with varying levels of success, as Rara herself will know. So I will just get going through these slides. So there's two reasons why I suppose two aspects to it. It's the how and the why. We are a students' union. Without engaged students, we cease to exist. I'm here today because I was a particularly engaged student, just like Rara. And without student engagement, there is simply no union. There is no need for us to exist. Similar to any kind of union, be it workers or academic in this case. So I'll just give a quick, please stop me if I'm going too fast or I'm speaking too quickly. That is my Kerry upbringing. I'll give you a quick rundown as to how the union actually exists. So we all know that this 17,000 has actually gone up since this graphic was made. Essentially, it's like an inverted pyramid where we have all the students in college. From these students, classes elect their own class reps, as we all know. From these class reps, we actually have school conveners. Many people don't know about the existence of these. So in between class reps and our faculty conveners like Raro, we have got school conveners. And it's actually a role that I occupied. So throughout my time in college, I've gone from being a regular student to the class rep from my course of radiation therapy. From that, I became therapies convener for my school. And from there, I became what we call a part of union forum through becoming the off-campus officer. So within the remit of my role is essentially engagement with health science students in terms of things like placement, internships, and the like of that. And then at the peak, we have our 6 now, is it with Padraig for Irish? 6 sabbatical officers who we all tell what to do. So I think I'll move on then to the how. When I was actually examining this question, I came across, it was a really good question because it's one that we ask ourselves every year, multiple times a year within the union. How do we actually up engagement and how do we actually engage students? This is a model that I came up with. It's 3-pronged. So we have inclusion, accessibility, and incentives. Within the status of a students' union, we need to offer them things in order to get students engage with us as well as they are with their studies and their academics and the like. And I have my little graphic up there as well. And I actually have presented a sort of case study in one of the major ways that we engage students. You may be familiar with it. It's our class rep training. And I have it here. Now, class rep training, traditionally, for the last few years up until this year, I believe was a really good example of how we incorporated all 3 aspects of student engagement into one. However, this year, we held it on campus in the arts block. And I think it's not an unpopular opinion to say that class rep training this year was a complete failure. Essentially, that graphic illustrates what it was like to be there as I gave talks at it and saw engagement drop completely. And I believe the reason for this was a lack of incentive. And you could argue there's a lack of inclusion as well, as information about the class rep training was disseminated to class reps far too late notice. In previous years, class rep training consisted of a full weekend off campus in hotel accommodation, paid for in full or at least heavily subsidised by the TCDSU. And I think it's a great incentive to get people to run for class rep. I've been an a polling clerk, and I've also campaigned to get people to sign up to be class reps. In my first year, I was far too shy and scared of my own shadow to be a class rep. And then as I became more involved and made more friends, I saw they were involved in the union and figured that I liked the idea of being one. But without this incentive this year, I believe is a huge reason why it did not work. Excuse me. So following on from that, how do we actually measure engagement in the union? We consist of three most common things: our turnout at referenda, turnout at elections, as well as how many people are running for election. And if you are familiar, the reason we have all these class reps is to go to council as well. Council is a big meeting where we all sort of argue about policy, decide what motions we want to pass. Honorary memberships are given at the last council every year, and it gives us a good gauge of our issues, who's listening, who has issues, what do we need to do. And part of council, like any great meeting, is the famous Q word, quorum. So that is a very apt way that we often measure engagement. And the answer is we use all of these to measure our engagement within the union. So these two headlines take from Trinity News, and they are evident of the turnout that we've had at elections this year. The Gaeilge Initiative referendum passed obviously by 90%, but it was the highest turnout for any referendum that we have had in the last 5 years. I think in total there was 1,600 votes, which sounds like a drop in the ocean, but when you think about it, it's just under 10% of the student body, or thereabouts. So it was a monumentous occasion for us. And then for the TCDSU sabbatical elections this year, we had the highest number of candidates, including myself, with limited success, going for election. And I think we all considered it a great win when somebody wants to take your job, within the union at least. And now, as we come to the subject of engagement in health sciences, this is where it becomes a lot more difficult for people like myself and Raro. And I found an image that really, I think, encapsulates what it can feel like to try to engage students. And I was going through these late last night, and I came up with this. And I like this image because it can really go both ways for students. Let me get my little prompts here. We spend a lot of time thinking, okay, why won't students engage with us? Why don't they want us to help them? You know, in a certain way, what's wrong with them? Why won't they talk to us? I spend a lot of time in my role thinking, why won't students engage with me? Why won't students come and meet me? Why do students not contact me for issues? And the short question is that they don't know. So throughout the year, I had to reframe. I've held this position for 2 years, and I had to reframe my thinking as a sort of, well, why would students come to me? Why would students give me feedback? What can I do for them? And I think that's where the three-pronged approach of incentives, accessibility, and inclusion come into it. When I go on the ground and I meet students at different elections, referenda, when I'm giving out free things from the union, cans of Monster for STI tests and the like, I often find these questions being asked to me. When I was doing polling for both referenda and different class rep elections, I often heard, oh, my voice doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. When I would liaise with my own class about issues, I would often hear, well, no one cares about us. We're so small. Nobody knows we're here. And the final question is, well, why would I? And they're all quite hard questions to hear when you are someone who is engaged in trying to improve things for students, like all of us here. It's very hard to hear because you feel, I'm here, I'm trying to engage with you. I'm trying to make things better for you. And so it leads me to break down that sort of model. When we can't reach out to students, sometimes we feel like the relationship between students in health sciences and maybe decision-making powers or anybody who's trying to get feedback can be a little bit broken down. So how we bridge this gap in the Students' Union is through inclusion. And the number one way that we include students is through class representatives. And an issue within health sciences, because we have such because everybody, both lecturers, staff, and students all have a heavy workload, we're under pressure to get class reps elected sort of unofficially in, I suppose, Google form type elections and things like this. This is sufficient within a class group only. In terms of trying to get in contact with these class representatives, I say it here, no SU run elections mean that we actually have no way of contacting them. We don't know that they're there, and we're not able to give them the support that they need, that they deserve. We're not able to offer them class rep training, which is great fun and a great way for, especially for first years, to meet other students in other disciplines and really build connections. We cannot offer them a place at faculty assembly because we can't send them the email.
Can I just ask, is it because of the timeline that it's happening?
Yeah, I think in my experience, it's that decisions have to be made a little bit earlier for faculty in health sciences, and it's through no one's fault. It's just often the way that it is. I've seen it in my own class. With things when you're going out on placement, maybe early in the year, when you need for a class photo for my year, because I'm in my final year, they wanted to take it nice and early, and we had to have a class rep. Now we were lucky that he got pushed back and delayed, and that we were able to elect a class rep through that. But essentially, having no contact details mean we can offer them no support, which means they don't know that we're there and they don't know where they can come.
Can I also say,
Yeah.
for me, so I'm Simone, I'm the school
Thanks, Simone, how are you?
welfare and school. I always would look to the SU for my contacts,
Mm.
who the class reps are,
Yeah.
and like that. If you guys don't have them, then I can get that.
Exactly.
And then communication breaks down. So
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely think the SU and elections are essential.
Yeah.
They're really key in building.
Really, the purpose of the SU elections is to compile the education officer's master document list of all these contact information. But I am cognizant of the fact that it's not always feasible to wait for us to come down with our big black ballot boxes and our free love hearts and try and get students like that. So an alternative that I've come up with is when student reps have made themselves noted, if a list can be compiled at all by anyone in health sciences, or just when you know that a class rep has been elected, encourage them to email the education officer so that their email can be added into this doc saying I'm such and such belong to, you know, XYZ. And so we can include them like that.
And could the Students' Union election be run earlier for our?
For our faculty, it is something that we are looking into. It's something that Aoife and I have had a look at this year. I suppose it's something that I can look into again, because the Sabbats do start working in June. With regards to elections, the SU elections require input from the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission comprises of full-time students as well. So it's a little bit hinging on that, but there certainly is wiggle room that when reps are elected, if we even just encourage them to get in contact, just simply send an email to the education officer saying like, this is who I am, you know, include me in any trainings and any free things that you're giving out.
Would it be completely impossible to have the elections at the end of the previous year for the following year?
Probably. Just because first years compose a huge, you know, first years can be the most engaged students that we are looking to get, because we're looking to essentially train them early, and get people engaged earlier.
For all years except first year.
Yeah, we could look into it. Class rep elections are a huge undertaking. They require about a team of 10 people to count the votes, and then up to 15 people then to actually man the polling stations at different hours. The only thing with having them at the end of the year is that a lot of the Electoral Commission and the Oversight Commission would have exams, different things like that happening. But it's something that I can feed back to my support staff and discuss.
I just mentioned in pharmacy, the students, the fourth year students go on placement from the 1st of September. And so because they're then spread out across the country, we won't get them somehow to elect a class rep.
Yeah.
So what we do is we contact them at the end of third year, and we ask them who would like to be class rep next year, because we would like that to fix that already, so we know who to contact. Because they come back to us then and from January and for, you know, on campus teaching, and then we actually do need a class.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
While they're away, we don't need it so much, and the students think they don't need it.
Yes.
So for us, we actually kind of tell them, you know, do
Yeah,
that at
yeah,
the
yeah.
end of third year.
Absolutely.
And for first years, I have to say, it's really difficult to get them to vote for a class. They
Yes,
don't know
they
each
don't
other.
know each other. It's it's really hard.
Happens often, and that's a bit unfortunate, that the student who repeats the year
We'll end up.
put their hand up because they feel they know things, but oftentimes it's a student who's struggling and who should really be focusing on the academic. And then there, you know, then they're not a great class rep because they don't
Yeah.
feel too much of the
Yeah.
pressure.
Good point. But I'm a bit conscious
Yeah.
of the time. Did you, Simone, did you?
I was gonna say that I can actually bring it up and I'm
Yeah.
speaking.
Okay,
perfect.
chance.
All right. I'll try and get these through. Another thing we bring in is incentives. At council, we give free pizza, refreshments, and in the form of drink tokens, I will admit. And there's a great sense of camaraderie. You can attend with your friends, you have a bit of fun. But aside from that, most effective way of incentivizing engagement, I believe, is simply just show your wins. We have a very active students union this year. Some people agree with it, some people don't. But always, I believe the most effective way of getting people involved is to say, look, we did this through student engagement. We're able to achieve things for you. And I think if that was to be applied in the faculty year, it would be like, well, this is how your feedback has actually changed things. This is how we actually use it. I know I'm speaking from personal experience, but I've also always found that very helpful with actually sitting down and giving back feedback. So I think simply just showing your wins, showing how it changes is incredibly effective. In terms of accessibility, the union it's constantly changing. We have both in-person ballot papers and we have an online system as well. For council, we try to have accessible venues. We've actually held council in the Queck Theatre here. It's pretty accessible. It's a little bit warm, but we do try to take some sensory considerations as well. We try and get input from our accessibility officers, our part-time officer, and access officer, and anyone who wants to speak about it. And then we prepare. So this year it was in the Queck theatre. In previous years, it was always in the arts block. That's a little, people found that a little bit more accessible. But these things have to be booked weeks and weeks and months and years in advance. So that's a very quick rundown of accessibility because I am conscious I'm taking away other people's time. Essentially, the SU is not the perfect model. We really struggle in terms of engagement. If you stay around Chocolate or House 6 long enough, you'll hear kind of joking refrain, we should have an officer for that. We actually have two. We have an engagement PTO, part-time officer, and we have the comms and marketing officer. And we still are having elections that are uncontested. It's fewer than roles, it's better than having roles unfulfilled, but ideally you want a couple of people going for election because it means people want to be involved. So engagement is an unending process. It's constantly evolving. We're always asking ourselves that. And the biggest way that we can do that is actually through collaboration with schools and departments and faculties, instead of being at loggerheads. We all have the same goal, and that's student welfare and student education and well-being. And I really believe that a collaborative relationship is better than one where we're at loggerheads. And my own personal input is that I've always tried to bring the SU to students by physically going up and talking to people, flagging them down when they're on the way to the lectures and talking to them. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry it was a bit of a long one and I took up your time, but thanks for listening to me.
That's brilliant.
Actually, do
Yeah. We have some.
Allah. Michelle, do you have slides or?
Sorry, yeah, I had a couple, but actually didn't really, I didn't.
So I think the slides don't seem to be changing. We couldn't see that on the screen. Sorry about that. They were changing on our screen here in the room, but for the Zoom audience at home, they were stuck on a slide.
Okay, could you just show me my?
Okay. Okay,
Bring them up.
let me just open this. First of all, I'll open Michelle's next. It happens to you. So Zoom. Share screen. That's your one there, occupational therapy. And now, where is it? Slide.
Oh, Zoom is gone. I didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. It really sounds like I can see, like it's just, that's all. I don't need
to
the
be
sign.
still on.
But it's, look.
But the
I did say at the very start, never do a hybrid meeting. Look, oh my God. Is there anybody still online on Zoom?
looks like
Stick something in a chat.
Yeah.
Yes, there, all right.
So don't worry about it, just if I can see this, it's the slide myself.
It's there. Second. Or I can
If you
also
click on
close
the-
that.
So this is from.
It's working again on the screen at least. Can we get the slides later? Yes, I will make it available later. Try this share screen one more time. And then can you see something, Astrid? Astrid, how do you press that?
If you just go to
I
this one
normally
anyway,
do it in
don't
a
worry.
different way, so. If we can bring this up here.
Okay.
I think it's.
That's okay. Yeah, so that's good.
I think it's not
Oh,
being shared.
so
at the
do share
moment.
screen. There,
You click on the screen you want to share.
that's it now, it's not.
Oh, yeah, good. So that should
Can-
be, that should be
Okay,
shared.
Can we
perfect.
just check with the participants at home? Can you see it? Yes.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm Michelle Spertus from Occupational Therapy, and just to preface, we're quite a small in that we only have 40 students per year. So it's actually a small, and it's much easier for us to communicate with our students on a kind of regular basis, I think, because of that. But we do a number of things, and I think I'm going to talk about what I was meant to talk about, but I can't still see what I want to see. Let me just see if I can minimize this for a second. So I suppose in occupational therapy, we have a number of different ways of seeking feedback from our students. The first is your individual module feedback, and we do that consistently on all our modules. So each module within the 4 years, we do feedback. We do it at the end of the module. I appreciate what you're saying, but for the module, it's kind of to capture the teaching within that module. But what I have found myself was, and I went back last year and the same this year to doing it on paper, because I found I got the feedback then from all of the students. Whereas when you're getting it at the end of the semester, there's lots of assignments due and people just don't have the time. So you're getting much less students giving you feedback. I know it doesn't collate it, and if you have 200, maybe that's harder and you don't get the nice things that you get in Qualtrics or anything to give you the statistics. But I'm essentially looking forward to make sure that I'm hearing from the students, and we would really value it in terms of things that we can happen within the module itself. The other thing that we do, and I might get back to that in a second, is we have curriculum year head meetings with each year. So we meet them at the beginning of the semester and we meet them at the end of the semester. So I'll be meeting the second years this year. I'm the curriculum year head of the second years, as well as being the head of the discipline. And that's a meeting for all students to be at. So that's a forum where we try not to get into individual criticisms of lecturers, things like that. But if the students have challenges around particular modules, questions about why one module is in this semester and not another. A lot of what we've been having discussions on recently is the lack of facilities up in the Trinity Centre. So that takes up a lot of the discussions that we have. And it's an opportunity for us too, because I think sometimes, so somebody made this point already, it's not just getting the feedback, but what we do about it. So students have to feel, if they give the feedback, that something's actually going to happen with it, but something can't always happen. So for example, students might say, we really think this module should be in second year. We can talk about, well, actually, we've only got 60 ECTS credits. This module has to happen here because it doesn't happen there. Or one of the big challenges our students have, for example, is knowing when they're going on placement, where they're going. And they want to find out as early as possible, but we cannot give that out until we, for example, have all the placements to give them, because we can't give some students theirs and some not others. But we can explain, look, this is how many placements we have. We only have this amount and we need it. So we can't always change the things that students want want us to change, and some of it's outside of our control, but we can show what we're listening and we can explain it. And I think the third thing that we have a curriculum committee meeting, and we have at least 2 of those in a semester, and our class reps are part of the curriculum committee, so they come to our curriculum meetings. Not every one of them, because they're busy, so if we're trying to work on a new module or something, they don't have to come to those, but they come and they hear the discussions that we're making. So they're actually part of decisions around, well, actually, we did a lot of work to change our 4th year to bring in the capstone project. So they were part of those kind of discussions in relation to that. But what I find is you may have a class rep present, but no, everyone doesn't hear it. So the class rep is busy themselves, can't feedback every single thing to the class. So we find that if we have these curriculum year ahead meetings, that all the students can hear and have that chance as well. But we involve our class reps in our committee, curriculum committee meetings. The other thing that we do is for students to feel that they have part of any changes within the curriculum. So we have kind of curriculum consultations with kind of key stakeholders. And again, we invite class reps to come to any of those meetings so that they can hear and be part of any changes that are kind of happening within that. We also have our class reps meet our external examiners, so when that comes too. But for us to look at change within modules, and again, like an example of, for example, module feedback, I do an OT for Children module. I have 2 assessment components to it. There was a concern that might be too much assessment, so I got feedback from the previous 2 years, and they felt it was a good way of assessing, and then we stuck with that. So we do try to act on the feedback. All of it we can't necessarily do, but the students have that opportunity to come individually to us. Obviously, also because we are a small group, you mentioned in your talk that students have individual questions around modules, so they can ask those in class, or if they email us, I tend to email everybody, so all the students get that feedback if there's a query around an assignment or something like that. So we have different little kind of informal ways, but then we have our formal mechanism as well for our students to input into changes within the curriculum. I think just to say, and I had another slide because I was a little going off. Okay, I agree. How do I go back? Doesn't really matter. But I suppose in a way we are up in the Trinity Centre for Health Sciences. This is a challenge for our students to feel connected in terms of feeling part of college. So it's kind of important to us. I've just been the head of discipline for a couple of years, but to try to build a sense of OT community, because I think if we foster a TCD OT identity, it's really helpful for our students. And I think oftentimes our students can feel quite isolated, especially first year students, when they don't know and they're busy and then they're traveling down. So to try to build our own sense of community. So we do a number of different, and we've started to introduce more of these. So actually we've always done a couple of things with our older years, but we've tried to do more with our first years to involve them in some early student events to bring them together. So to connect them with each other so they feel part of this kind of overall community. We've also tried to connect the years. So we've had, like, for example, last week we had an event, a lunchtime event with some refreshments for all 4 years where we had OTs come in to talk to them. So we try and bring class groups with other class groups together. Our students have become more active in setting up their own type of Instagram account where they post certain things. I need to get with the Instagram myself, right? We've tried to have more presence for our students on our website. I don't know if we're talking about mostly about undergraduates here, but just even in terms of our postgraduate, we've tried to build a lot more activities and connectivity to it, and also to try to acknowledge the external achievements of our students, because they're great and they do all sorts of other things as well. So to do that, so I think the students need to be, my understanding, not being a student currently, is that students have to feel that what they're doing is going to make a difference and that they're listened to. So if we can try to demonstrate that, and as I said, I feel if it's like a whole class kind of a meeting, you can explain why certain things are changing and work on that. The other thing is if students bring towards their concerns around facilities or things like that, to use the mechanisms we have to, like, I know Simone sits on the school executive as well, but to bring things to the school executive to see what we can do to work together. So that's really just, I suppose, what we try to do in OT. It's not perfect, and I'm sure if our students, and I was hoping maybe one of our students would be here and might be able to either say that's absolute rubbish or actually agree with it in terms of how they feel. But I think it's to kind of create that they feel that it's going to change something, that they are being listened to, but we can't always do everything that might be what we would like to do, or to make those changes. So that's basically all I have to say. Thank
Michelle,
you.
that's great.
Thank you. I think who's next is Astrid is up next. Do you want to do yours?
Okay, so my name is Astrid Sassen. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning in the School of Pharmacy in my 8th year now. So I have a lot of experience with student feedback, and but what I'll be talking about is only the undergraduate students and only years 1 to 4. So when do we get student feedback and how? So we do it via SurveyMonkey as one part of it. So it would be 1 survey per year cohort for all modules. So we don't survey per module, but in January we would send out. So in January, we would send out after the exams and after the SCOLs, before teaching begins, a survey, and students would typically have 2 weeks to complete it. And then we also send out in April after teaching finishes and before the exams start, another SurveyMonkey, and that is for the 2nd term. We would also have a student-led forum, which we hold early February or sometimes end of January, and that would be with the class reps, and it's held by one of our tutors in the school. And we ask the tutor asks the class reps before to check with the students to get feedback from them on what any particular issues are in the different year groups. And this year we did include a question regarding EDI, the policy and awareness. It was actually interesting to hear that students weren't aware at all that Trinity had anything on EDI policy and procedures. We also have obviously a student rep on our program management committee, and the year coordinators send an email to the class reps before each PMC, and also to all the module coordinators in that year, to see if there is any feedback to be brought to the program management committee meeting. So what kind of feedback are we looking for via SurveyMonkey? So these are actually, pretty much the questions on the SurveyMonkey. So satisfaction with quality of learning experience, and then listing each of the modules. Workload distribution within the term, workload per module, similar, higher, lower. And then did you get feedback on your assignments within 20 days? And then also, because in pharmacy, we've introduced the self-directed learning day on Mondays for the 2nd, 3rd, and the 5th year students with their postgrad. So we also asked about that, if students are in favor of this. And then we have free text. We asked the senior fresh about SCOLs, how their experience of the SCOL exams was. We also asked students about overlaps in between modules of that year, or vertically in between years, if there are any overlaps, which is actually quite interesting and important for us to see. Mostly students just say, any reinforcement is really welcome, but sometimes they say, oh, we hear 4 times about lipids and it's not really needed. So then we can act on that. Then we ask students to note any positive aspects in another text box, and then in the last one, improvements that they can suggest. Now, this is a new sentence that we put in this year for the first time when leaving comments. Please ensure they're constructive and avoid mentioning any staff member or making personal remarks. We've had it in the past that there was staff members named, and especially junior staff members, you know, take it very seriously and found it very discouraging to get very explicit feedback from students at times. So we had to put this in now, and it's gotten a lot more neutral, the feedback. So response rates from our Survey Monkey surveys are actually very high. So these are from the last 3 times we sent out a survey. So the full of both of last year academic year and the January one, between 53 and 81% response rate. And so they have 2 weeks to complete the survey. After 1 week, they get an email reminder, and these emails are sent by an admin. Now, what I usually do just before the survey closes, I send an email to the students and I tell them, well, the response rate of the junior fresh is 53% and of the senior sophomore is 28%. I know you can do better. And just to get a few extra to do that. And so we're actually happy with our response rates. And students in the text boxes, and that's actually why I think it's better to have them do it in their own time. We get sometimes really long feedback from students, module by module, what they like, what they dislike, what they thought could be done differently. And if it was done 5 minutes at the end of class, there just wouldn't be the time to give such detailed and very much reflective feedback. The student-led forum, well, all the class reps come and they always have something to say. And so that has a very good response rate. Obviously, the minutes of that meeting are then sent to the DUTL, and I'll show you what we do with the feedback in the next and last slide then. With the year coordinator contacting the student reps before the PMC meetings, usually they don't get any feedback. But to be honest, the feedback, if they get something, is usually not something to be brought to the PMC, which is very much high level. It's really things like, oh, we have not received feedback yet for this assignment, or we didn't get the pre-lab videos up or something. And that is more something to be dealt with locally. And it's come through a number of times. I think the main thing is closing the feedback loop, that the students feel that it was worth it. So who gets access and who actually sees the results of the Survey Monkeys that we send out? So full access by the admin, they send the PDF to me as DUTL. I'll send it on to the head of school and to the year coordinators. I also, and that requires a good bit of work for me, is I collate all the different graphs and the feedback, either general feedback or feedback related to that particular module in a Word document, and send that to the module coordinators. The module coordinators then share that with the academics in that module and discuss that before they have to write up a module report, which is then sent to the program management committee meeting via the year coordinator, who presents that there in June at the last PMC of the year. So the student-led forum, so any from the minutes that I get from that, I would discuss or flag it again to the module coordinators. So that's kind of the line of how things are being processed. So the module coordinators discuss any changes or not changes with academic staff and send that to the year coordinator. The year coordinator via the module report, it's presented to the program management committee at the end of June. And implementations are then discussed at the year introductions that the year coordinator does in the first week of term in September. We highlight changes and we explain why we didn't do a change for both, from the response that they gave last year and for the response that the higher year gave last year, and the changes we've now implemented for the year that they're in. So I think this is yeah, this is really key. Just closing the feedback loop. And I talked to one of our students who helped at the pharmacy stand at the open day, and he said it's really so nice to see how, you know, how our feedback informs change, and there's so many things that we've changed in the past, and sometimes it just doesn't work, and we change it back. But I tell the students, you know.
Okay.
Exactly. I think that's the main thing. And just one last word, the Irish student survey that the students also have to do at some point, or used to do. We had extremely low response rate, although our students are fairly happy to give us feedback. And I think part of it is because for whichever channels it goes, they just don't get that.
Yeah, it's also very long as well, and very.
And it's very
Yeah.
long, yeah.
Is this student server.ie one? Yeah, that's how.
Yeah.
Very long. They are revamping it.
So it's not there and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just way out of date. Thanks, Astrid, that's great. Thank you. Looking at them around there, yeah, we just.
I'll do that because I have meeting 22.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
discussion.
Oh, you'll be.
We do. Thanks.
It's all happening today.
I might start given
Yeah.
the time constraints,
Yeah.
so. Just maybe keep that first thing.
Yeah. Listen.
First of all, thank you for arranging this, to Nina and to Brian. I think this is something that's been taxing, I think, all of the school and faculty for a long time. We're talking about engagement. This was one issue with engagement is we don't have the students involved in the room, online, staff or students. What that says about the faculty in terms of getting everybody engaged, and it's a two-way street. It's not just student engagement. I think part of the story is staff engagement as well. So we had a conversation actually between Astrid, myself and Michelle on Friday. We had a little bit of a discontinuity in what we thought engagement was. So we agreed we're lucky as faculty that student engagement with our programs isn't as big a problem as I think it might be elsewhere in the college in terms of professional courses we expect for our students to attend, and generally they do. That isn't an issue. But the important thing I think for here is we want students to become active partners in their program and how it's implemented, how it's managed, how it's run. Ultimately, staff at the end of the day have that responsibility, but we need to make sure that the main stakeholders who are students have a voice, and that at least it should be listened to. So why do we do it? There was a requirement. We heard about the quality report. Usually our professional bodies require it as well. Interestingly, our dental cancer accreditation this year, a huge proportion of our report was student feedback. There was nothing in it that we haven't heard already from the students. But most importantly, it's the right thing to do. The students are our most important asset, and we need to hear from them. They see what's working. They're on the ground. They see the big picture. We all teach our little bits here and there. They see the continuum, and they can identify where bits perhaps aren't connecting as we think they might be. So what do students want? What do staff want? We don't know unless we ask them. So we're lucky again, a bit like the other programs here. Interestingly, that the three people we're hearing from today are all from relatively small programs, where we have huge amount of day-to-day access, face-to-face involvement with students. As Raro said, the best feedback is actually at the end of a session. Students can feel open and free to ask a question, hopefully to the wider audience, not just asking the lecturer what's coming up in the exam, which sometimes happens, but there is that face-to-face contact, which is there all the time. We're small group teaching, I think probably in all of our programs, so we get to know our students really well, and we hope that they feel empowered and enabled enough to be able to ask questions or make suggestions or identify issues where there are issues. But having said that, sometimes if there's something that's difficult to say, there is a requirement for some anonymity at some stage along the way as well. So a bit like the other programs, I think we have a huge amount of overlap between our programs in terms of what we do. We have regular meetings between the Duttle I was Duttle, I should say who I am for first. I was the Duttle for 7 years, so after this beaten me, until about 2 years ago. And because we use electronic to a large part of this, I still own the survey platform licenses. So that's one thing that I still haven't managed to be bequeathed to my new Duttle yet, but it's getting there. So I just say that, so the current Duttle would meet with the class reps and the relevant, because we work in a hospital, there's directors of undergraduate clinics, there's patient service managers, there are the nurse managers, all of the people who are involved in the day-to-day experience of the students, to discuss those high-level operational issues as opposed to the granular small issues that might be spoken about individually to lecturers or PBL tutors or whatever. Like all the other programs, we have class representation on our school executive and at the major committees that discuss student issues and discuss the curriculum. Attendance at these can be patchy at best. And for the first time today, Kerry from Han was really interested to hear what's training our class reps get, because we don't provide them with any training. So they kind of need to have to read our minds of what exactly do we want them to do, because we haven't really told them. So I think there's a two-way street here that the schools probably should be involved in that training as well. But because be good to know what the training involves, be good to know what our, I don't know if any dental science students ever attended that training or not. I don't know what their engagement has been. Yeah. I don't even know who I've never known who the convener was. I know who the class reps are, but I've never known who the convener was. So I think that might be. Okay.
Yeah. We do polling stations in dental. It's not postgrads who come up to us because it's right next to one of the offices, but
yeah, so it'd be great if
yeah.
yes, you could work with us to try and make sure that that bridge is connected there. It's we'd be very open for that. So there's feedback after a lot of our teachers with pre-PBL, and each block has feedback. The students, again, that used to be paper-based and was very, very well documented. And now it's kind of fallen between the cracks, and I'm not sure how effective that is anymore. But our main way of getting feedback is, I suppose, to satisfy the tick the box, for the word, is, and I hear what was being said about making sure that the feedback happens soon after the teaching, but then we have the problem with the challenges that students are being just flooded with requests for surveys all the time. And it's trying to minimize that, but maximize the bang for buck as well. So we actually do one end of year big survey, which, as you say, I know if you can remember back to what happened back in September, when they're getting asked this perhaps in June, and I know that's a challenge. But the problem that we have is our modules are not, they're not individually led, they're integrated, so we have many people could be involved in a module, so there's no single owner, so it's very difficult, so it has to be centrally run to some extent. And that's centrally run at the moment by me. And but having said, in addition to that, a lot of people run their own individual kind of, they want to get feedback themselves directly, so they have their own paper-based, online-based. So again, we don't even know the full entirety, I suspect, of how many other surveys are being run within our program. So what's important, so we use Qualtrics. Actually, SurveyMonkey was SurveyMonkey, but I was made to change that because we lost the SurveyMonkey license or something, and now Qualtrics is there, and thank you for Lena. That's shifted again recently as well, and that's kind of working now as of today. So what we want to find out, that's an important thing, and I'm not sure how many staff are involved in contributing to the surveys and what's in it. Who's responsible for that design, distributing, collating? At the moment, it's me. I'm not quite sure what that is, and maybe that's something we need to look at. The timing is super important. If you leave it too late in the year, it's too close to an exam, and of course, people's minds are focused on those, obviously. But if it's too early, then there's bits at the end of the year that you're not going to be able to get feedback on either. So this is what it looks like. So Qualtrics works really well. It was a real pain to migrate from SurveyMonkey to Qualtrics, but it's really trying to get this as easily for them to use as possible, and it works really well on a phone. It works actually, I think, better on the phone than it does on a laptop. It's really amenable to that, and it's, once you get the handle on how to use it, it's actually pretty straightforward. Again, trying to encourage them, that's a bit long text, but it's trying to show to them that this is something that we do take seriously and that we do actually listen to. So you can ask anything. So it generally takes, it could take, if you just tick the box, good, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, without making any comment, it probably takes, I'd say, no more than 5 to 10 minutes. But if we were expecting them, and we don't expect anybody to put any comments in unless they really want to, it can take as long as they want, depending on how much they're exercised. Again, a bit like Astrid, did we try to encourage constructive comments wherever possible? This is hopefully going to, allow students to get a positive influence, and I'll come to it at the end. This shouldn't really be the only opportunity that they have to complain. but very often it is. So we can ask anything. So it's not just about the modules, it's all about their experience of the actual facilities, of what support they're getting from various individuals or groups within the hospital. Do they like PBL? We know they don't, but we ask it every year. And are they getting satisfactory support? All that kind of stuff. So it's all straightforward. The Year 5 program survey is a bit different in terms of we're looking at the more holistic and general, their experience of over the entire program and how well prepared they are for general practice and things like that, rather than asking about specific modules, which hopefully they've had the opportunity to discuss throughout their 5 years there. So our challenges response rates are quite similar to Astrid's, 50 to 80%. What's really important is we get the class rep. Class rep buy-in is super important here. Again, it's just one of their responsibilities. So I send the survey to the class rep in advance to say, is there anything that we're not missing in this that you would like us to ask? So it allows them to just, if there's something that we have missed, that we can make sure it's included in that. Hopefully then that encourages them to make sure to get as many students as possible to be involved. Again, closing the loop is super important, as Astrid and Michelle have said. Without that, of course, why would they bother? So we compile a document that summarizes. People do change this. So what happens with that module feedback? There are module owners, there are people who own the bits within the modules. They're expected, they're sent a form, here is the feedback. What have you done about it? And it might just be ignore, or not possible, but almost always there is something that can be done, or if it can't be done, there's a good reason. So we do a summary document, maybe 3 or 4 examples for each year. Here's what we have done in response to your feedback last year, and here's maybe a couple of things that we just can't do, but here are the reasons why it's not possible to do it, just to show that we have looked at it. But the problem with that is, of course, is staff engagement and staff actually responding to it. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of moving parts, and to make sure that they feel obliged to return their comments. Ring fencing time, the ones at the 80%, we actually give them time at the end of specific dedicated classes, which is easy to do in 1st, 2nd, 3rd years. 4th and 5th years are very together in one place. So that's where we get down to the 50% response rates. That's a lot of work. It's pretty time consuming to manage all of this. Platform, the licenses was an issue, but on Friday, Lena hopefully changed that for me, that I was only allowed to have one survey where I needed 5. Electronic versus paper. Electronic is certainly easy to collate the information. Would paper be better? Probably yes, in terms of maximizing return rates. But again, how do you logistically then incorporate all that information? That would be very difficult. As I say, buy-in from staff is super important. And then finally, this should not be a complaints process. Sometimes, after it says, sometimes people are name checked, sometimes very positively, and make sure that the information is always fed back to the individuals who are named positively. But sometimes it's negative, and sometimes there might be one comment out of, if we have 48 students in a year, and if it's one comment and that gets sent to the staff member, they take that really personally, even if it isn't representative necessarily. If 48 people are saying the same comment, then we got a problem, because one person, what do you do with that? So very often in that situation, I will redact that information. I will send it to the Duttle and say, I'm not sure what you want to do with this. Maybe it's something you want to share with the staff member or not. But the problem is yours. And that's pretty much it.
Last.
There's a couple of things in the chat, so I'll just check. Oh, they couldn't see the slides again on that last one. Slides. Sorry about that. We'll send them off. Yeah. That's all right.
Slightly. Hi, everyone. So I'm here to talk about School of Medicine, and particularly, move my chair a little, kind of a you said we did. So much of what I've been trying to do over the last while has been to gather information as the Student Welfare and Support Officer for the School of Medicine from students. So that started early in the year with me contacting the reps that I knew about, and understanding that I didn't have all of the rep information. I then contacted the SU, and as the reps came online, I was getting that information, which meant that there could be more inclusion. Because this role that I'm in is new, I thought it was essential to understand what the students need and to get their feedback. So a lot of at the beginning were the information and feedback that I was getting was around communication and the styles of communication. So we are required to communicate with our students using email for it. We have to send emails to you with pertinent information to your Trinity email address. So that's fine. However, we don't have to also just remind you through email. So I asked the students how else, in addition to email, would they like to be communicated with? And that included things like Sway, Instagram, posters, electronic posters, things like that. So we made that change. I've started doing some Sway newsletters that include information on the services that are available and the kinds of supports that are available for students. And I try as much as I can to theme them. One of the things that Michelle spoke about was gatherings in the sense of belonging. And that was a thing that it's really tricky to do in the hospital campuses because it is what feels like it's so far away from the center of college. So I've been trying to think about events and what we can do. And couple of the really successful events that we had. One was the International Christmas event that we did for students. It was just outside term time in the last week, just before Christmas. And we gathered those that were not returning home to connect them to each other and create a sense of community. And also so that they could kind of connect themselves over the Christmas period and maybe have some meals together or go for walks together so that they weren't feeling isolated. We also are going to continue that. I have set up a schedule for 24-25 with a series of events that are going to happen once a month, either lunchtime or coffee morning style. So quite casual, but again, lightly themed so that at the beginning of the year, there's a welcome back in August for students. Then in September, there will be welcoming of the freshers. Then, you know, coming up towards Christmas, there'll be a time to sort of have a breather between exam preparation, but also gathering international students as well ahead of the Christmas break. And they're the kind of things that we'll be doing. There will be some guest speakers in to highlight the support services that are available. So early on in the year, disability services will be available. Later on in the year, there might be something about organising study for exams, that kind of thing. This is the kind of supports that have been asked for. So like I said, it's a you said, we did kind of situation. I think everybody has been talking about closing that feedback loop. And I think that's really, really important for you guys, because I think that, you know, you can talk until you're blue in the face. And like that image that Han put up, like you feel like you're talking to a wall, or we feel like we're talking to the wall, you know, to break down that and to make sure that we're including the kind of changes that A, we can do, and B, that are relevant to you, and making sure that we keep you in the conversation. So the plans that I have at the moment are very draft plans, because I haven't had an opportunity to speak with the students yet about what I want to do next year. If it isn't something that's going to be relevant to them, we'll have a look at it again and change it. You know, that's also important. So for me, the way that I'm engaging with students and the way that we want students to engage with us are a multitude of formal and informal. So I actually spoke this week to our school manager about doing a little bit of training for the students who are expected to attend exec, so that the reps know what the forum is about, what the terms of reference are, and how they can valuably, is that a word? Input into what's happening at the executive meetings. There are other forums that we use that are slightly less formal, that, you know, lots of students can attend and bring up various issues. And we're trying to get some more of those online, and they will include people like the head of school and the director of undergraduate teaching and learning. Because my remit also includes postgraduate students, one of the things that I want to do is be able to build some community space during the summer months, because our postgraduate students are year-round students, and we want to make sure that they don't feel isolated. We want to make sure that their needs are being met and that they know that they can still communicate with the school during those summer months. So like that, we're going to continue to do some get-togethers and things like that. I'm just going to look at my notes. What else am I doing? Yeah, so I suppose the things that we're doing is there's feedback and change, and then how we communicate that and how it's communicated to us, and using the technology that's available. So that's email, but it's also including things like surveys online and paper, but also the websites, events calendars and Blackboard, making sure that our contact information and details are there so that you know where and when to contact us, how to contact us, and the kind of response that you might get. So I suppose the topics like that I'm taking down from even this meeting, one of the things that I think will be really, really important is to advertise and continually advertise the student services available and how to contact them, but also the relevant policies to students, so that you understand that there is an EDI policy, that there is a dignity and respect policy, how to invoke the mental health policy, and, you know, any of the academic policies that are relevant to you, like exam guidelines, plagiarism, that kind of thing. So to make sure that they are more widely known. It's not that you need to know them inside out, you don't, just to be aware that they exist. And if you think that you are having an issue, or, you know, perhaps feeling like there's harassment going on or something like that, that you know where to turn to check that out and where those supports are available. So they're the kind of things that I'm going to be doing, and they're the kinds of I suppose that's the feedback that I've gotten from students, is what information is available and how that information is given to them and how they respond to us. And that's it. Thank you.
Just about to go into the chat part or the discussion part, but I suppose it's worth mentioning as well that Simone's role is, how long is your role in place, Simone?
Since May last year.
Since May of last year, and it was an initiative, okay, it was an initiative that was put in place by the School of Medicine in recognition that they wanted to boost student engagement. So it's a significant investment by the school, and it's a great positive thing to see. So someone else has said that there's really positive initiatives taken by OT and School of Medicine to build community and culture. Perhaps other schools could apply it too. Yeah. So, Brian, do you want to do a bit of Q&A with people?
Well,
or discussion?
There are. Are there any follow-up questions or anything points that people want to raise that maybe they think that we'll come back to, or were missed or whatever?
I think for me, I just to reiterate the importance of student reps.
Yeah.
Or to know who they are,
Yeah.
so that we can engage well with them. And yeah, I think that's really essential.
So you've said that, you know, aspect of the reps, like, and as Han said, there's a huge master doc of all the class reps that I have access to. And it's only when Simone pointed out, oh, I need this class, the school reps from med, from HHD. We don't have, like, there's so few people, and like how exactly am I meant to get them to come for faculty assembly?
Yeah.
I don't have their
Yeah.
emails, because of GDPR. I can't just go like search for someone's email. So it's a whole thing about the ghost reps when they elect themselves, but they don't let the SU know. So that's something that I want to tackle, like especially next academic year.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I thought that was a good one. You know, obviously closing the loop is important, showing people the significance of the feedback, but also, and you made a point as well, and it comes back to me because I was head of school for many years, that, you know, well, for whatever reason, you can't always, the class reps aren't always either in a position or maybe have the time to feed everything back to the students either. And sometimes you find you've had extensive conversations with the class rep and they've been in on decisions and the students don't know anything about it. So I guess it's important to use many different channels of communication. And I really like the idea, you know, especially in smaller classes and disciplines, of having, you know, getting everybody together, having a semi-social event or something like that. I think that's great for building communication. Probably not the best way, you know, the only way you can pick up detailed, granular feedback about modules and things, but it has to be a combination, I guess, of all of it.
I agree with that as well. I come from the radiotherapy, which is a school of like a similar size. I think it really helped to build. We have a a bit of a sense of community, but nothing major. I think that would be, it's a great idea. Love to see
So I
that.
think it's really important, and our students are quite isolated, you know, and it is challenging, life is challenging now for students, because they're all trying to work as well as study, and a lot more pressure on students, but actually I feel it. But even for us, it's like, it's to be part of the community, you feel then you're, and also it will help down the line get placements, but you know, like there's other sort of benefits. So, students, because they are our colleagues and.
That was interesting to hear that you have no idea what class rep training is. I myself, I never actually got to go in person. I never got the hotel stay because mine was in the COVID era. But it's definitely information that could be very easily circulated out to schools. Yeah, very easily, yeah. Owen is our new incoming education officer. And he's incredibly competent, so I'm sure he will be very on board with that as well.
The other observations that can come up, but you know, I found anyway, I think students have no trouble communicating among themselves. You know, there's more WhatsApp groups on fire over this, that, and everything else. Unfortunately, very often the information in them is wildly incorrect. And you know, this is where I think we have to continue to work on having a dialogue of like, God, if that was bothering you, no, that doesn't happen, that never happened, you know. Yeah, there's a fear factor, and I suppose when anxiety starts to ratchet up this time of the year now in particular, you know, the rumor mill just gets going, and I suppose maybe that's in a way not for staff and programs to deal with, but maybe that's something students have to look at among themselves too, I think.
It's definitely a role of responsibility for students to take the initiative in their own learning environment as well. I see it. I'm sure you see it.
It's much more,
so much easier to complain than to actually do something.
Well, I think it's, but I think it's to also understand that some things are there for a particular reason. You know, it's not that we're trying to be difficult and we're not going to do that or change that, or, you know, change a class that's happening on a Tuesday to a Thursday, but actually the person who's teaching it is part-time and only works, you know, so like there's all sorts of things, whereas actually resentment can build up, and it's not, you know, we might say it at a curriculum meeting, one, but it's not, you know, the concept. Whereas if you hear it, and you can have that discussion, you know, certain things can change, other things can change, but understanding why can be helpful.
That's great. We have to wrap it. I just.
No.
That from the people. Thank you to everybody
Oh, sorry.
on online and for sticking with us. It's really great participation. Thank you all for everybody in the room, and particularly for the people who took the time to put together their thoughts and talks. We really appreciate that. And I guess we have a couple of things we can work on.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, Raro, especially for leading the whole idea.
Yeah. Rest of day.
Very interesting. Thank you. Okay, thanks, everyone.